I have the clicker and I'm ready to play Vanna, so I'm good. How's everybody doing today? Is anyone suffering from after lunch tiredness? Go ahead and raise your hand and stuff like that. That means you need to go get coffee, because this is going to be a great panel of discussion around workforce development, and so we're excited. And so I'm going to introduce myself and then have the panel members introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the presentation. Each panelist will present, and then we're going to get an active discussion around questions that you may have or even insights that you may have that will help us think collectively about how can we meet the demands of workforce development and meet the needs of New Hampshire and its residents. By the way, how do we call them New Hampshireans? I'm asking this because I want to make sure. Because I was in Connecticut last week, and I said, well, what do you call Connecticans? And they go, we don't call them Connecticans. They say, we're nutmeg. So my name is Barry Reaves. I'm the VP of DEIJ and Workforce Development for the Northeast Clean Energy Council. We are a regional organization, a tri-organization of an industry trade group representing about 300 plus organizations. Vision Energy is one of our wonderful companies that we love and appreciate. We're also an institute that does policy advocacy and research, as well as a 504, whatever code they want to kind of make it as and stuff like that, where we do philanthropical support as well. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to one of my colleagues.
My name is Jennifer Thornton. I work for GDS Associates, and today I'm going to get to talk to you about a research project we did on behalf of New Hampshire Saves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kristine Dudley, the Director of Workforce Development at Manchester Community College. Here today to talk a little bit about our colleges across the state, kind of where we are with workforce development, some more general strategies, but looking forward to talking with you all.
Hi, my name is Vaughan Woodruff. I'm the Vice President of Workforce Development at Revision Energy. We're going to talk a bit about our work on pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship. I'm from Maine. We're called Mainers, so just for the record, Barry. I'm also chair of the State Workforce Board up in Maine as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I got to get to Maine here very soon, so I don't want to mispronounce. So let's see how this works. So just real quickly, just to highlight some of the work that we do and where we're trying to get after within a regional standpoint. The NECEC covers all 6 states as well as New York, so hope nobody feels anything bad about New York. But we do cover 6 states and work directly with those states and those nonprofit organizations to really help drive innovation, policy solutions, working with municipalities as well, and community-based organizations to really help bring synergy and effort towards the workforce development and ecosystem across the different things. Under the NECEC, we also have the Clean Tech Open, which is one of the largest, oldest tech startup incubators within the country. We're very proud of that. We cover, the Clean Tech team covers everywhere from Canada down to Virginia now. We just did an award, and so we're proud of the work that they've done over our last couple of years. We've generated about $2 billion worth of investments in startups, as well as about 40, this cohort had 44 participants. 60% of those were diverse. Minority and women-owned startups, and so we're happy about that, as well as we continue our effort around workforce development and innovation and diversity within the sector. When we think about our workforce challenge, and I think this could probably synthesize across the panelists, which is there's always been this challenge of finding, number one, the right workers with the right skill set at the right time to really meet the demands of a very dynamic and very challenging industry within the clean energy sector. Technology is changing all the time, the demand is skill, and so the traditional model of workforce development doesn't always work and doesn't apply here, because you need to be able to find, we're thinking about offshore wind. What does that look like? What are the challenging and training needs if we're talking about solar? And so the workforce model that has kind of worked in yesteryear doesn't really suit today's industry, and we need to think holistically about how do we meet those demands and solutions. And then how do we expand in skills? We want to see our businesses productive. We want to see them growing. So how do we continue to ensure that there's a healthy candidate pipeline of talent and people being able to meet the needs as such? Number two is there's unclear pathways. How do individuals get into the sector? How do they navigate the myriad of training opportunities and programming and all the other stuff? I think if I just gave you the report from Massachusetts, where our office is based out of, there was 350 training providers. And all of them did a lot of different same things. When we get to Connecticut, it was 248. You'll find, and so there's a lot of different organizations, training pathways, programs that are not always aligned, doesn't always meet the requirements for industry partners. And so how do we navigate that? How do we help a person navigate and get to the right job? The other thing I'll point out is that a lot of times the training programs are not connected to an actual job. Their training programs, their programs are available, but they're not actually going to terminate into a job. And that's something that we continuously need to work through. Shortage of workers, specifically because of the low unemployment rate, there's a high need of trying to find. And so while we're happy that the fact that we have a low unemployment rate, we still need to meet the need of the emerging trend. And lastly, the workforce system's ability to grow the pipeline, meaning, and I'll use this as an example, as a veteran for 24 years, one of the things that I was in charge of is that how do we meet the demands of an emerging battle space? Meaning as we are trying to figure out what our objectives are and what the needs are of organizations, we had to consistently make sure that our training pipeline could actually meet the demands. When I was doing this in 2008, there was a need about 248,000 soldiers across 21 countries. And we had to really adjust our planning and upskills and necessary, and the speed in which we were training individuals to get them to the individuals that are in need. There's no difference here. We have to have healthy growing pipelines that stay very robust to meet the ever growing needs. We're start thinking about offshore wind. Are we ready to meet that need? We're thinking about the solar industry. We're thinking about weatherization and all the needs. Do we really have the pipeline of candidates who are prepared to really get out there and meet those demands? And so that's what the NEC does, try to work through partnerships and organizations to do so. So I won't read this, but this is kind of our mission. We see ourselves as that convener between a lot of different organizations, offering best practice solutions, but also bringing the industry perspective and the policy and workforce. So partnering with Clean Energy New Hampshire and other teams, the Vermont team and Maine as well, and Connecticut, just partnering together, trying to help drive solutions that help bring innovation and addressing the workforce challenges needs. And really, some of our objectives is what we're trying to continue to do, which is, number one, launch that workforce initiative across the region, where we're bringing more collaboration across both the region and then state specific to ensure that programs and creating online databases and innovation pathways and programming to connect job opportunities for potential hires to streamline this job process. Meaning we want to see candidates trained and into jobs. With no effort in this space. That space. Two, build more collaboration and connectivity. We need to get people talking. There's a lot of great things that are happening within the ecosystem, but they're not always talking to each other. So you've got a Revision Energy over there doing some great stuff, but you also have Longwood Energy over here doing some of the similar things. How do we not duplicate the efforts? So that way we can prioritize funding and support. If we got Manchester Community College doing an amazing clean energy programming, why do we need to have several other programs in the same area doing the same things? How about we prioritize who's doing what and build on that challenge? Ensuring organizations have the capacity to embed DEIJ. We have a changing workforce. We have a generation of young people who are coming into the workforce who see things differently, who look at things differently, and your organization to survive, and we use the term future-proofing, you've got to figure out how to build them into your organization. You need to be able to hire diverse. And when I say diverse, it's just not color, it's gender, it's background, it's geographical background, it's all those things that make up a very emerging organization that can meet the demands and the changing culture and structure, nature of our communities. So how do we make sure that our workforce and your organizations can do so? And then lastly, how do we actually quantify the demand? Every state seems to put out a workforce needs assessment. And while sometimes it's great, it always doesn't reflect the actual need. So we want to try to prioritize what are the actual demands, what the industry is saying, what the needs are, where the projects are coming. So that way we're actually training and being very effective in what we do. And so we want to do that. And then I'll put this out there just as a thought as well, is that when we're talking about building a more healthy DEIJ organization, Really what we're trying to say is that, do you have a comprehensive plan that actually addresses your culture, that makes sure that allows you to retain good talent? And here's what I mean by that. It takes about a year to hire somebody, right? To get someone to develop the funding for it, to get that, to develop your PD for that position and all your workforce, and then go out and put it out there for recruiting and hire, interview the people, get them onboarded, get them upskilled and ready to do work in your organization, and then hopefully they pan out within a year. If they don't, that means you got to go through this whole process again, which means time and money. On average, it costs anywhere between $44,000 and $50,000 to bring on a new staff member of resources and training. That's money that's coming out of your budget that you can't afford if you're trying to grow and expand your capacity. So how do you think more holistic about your recruiting practices? How can you partner with community colleges to ensure that you have candidates who can thrive in your organizations, but your organization is also free from the biases and things that especially culture, that won't let you keep and retain great talent? And how do you think about that across the broad spectrum? So that's kind of what NECEC does, and we're glad to be a part of this conversation and really help really build a healthy ecosystem across both New Hampshire and the region as well. I'll pass it over to my dear colleague.
Thank you.
And I'll turn slides. You want slides? You want me to do it?
Either way works for me.
I'll handle it.
That'd be awesome. Okay, so New Hampshire Saves worked with GDS to create a research project on workforce development. This is going to be an overview of what that project was. So the first thing we had to do was identify who has a piece in the pie. Workforce is a huge issue. It is not owned just by the utilities. And I'm sure everybody out there has had an opportunity where they've tried to hire someone and it's taken forever, or you haven't found the right skills, or you found someone that's really exciting and ready to go, but it's going to take you at least a couple years to get them to a place where they can help fulfill the need that you have. And the need is huge. So we started by identifying and saying, okay, how are we going to come up with a name for this group that we're going to talk to? And we came up with the New Hampshire Workforce Ecosystem. It's just a name. We just pulled it out of a hat. It's not to diminish anyone or raise anyone. It's just a way of figuring out who all is involved in this workforce issue. So as we talked to all these people, we started to discover that everybody's having the same problem. We're all trying to approach it on our own, and we're all trying to find ways to approach it, but we really have all the same problem. Part of that problem is contributed to the fact that the workforce is not there. And some of the reasons that it's not there is they've found more work, more money in another state. There are programs that are available in our surrounding states that are much more advanced than the program we could have here in New Hampshire. And they're all working, all the companies are working to try and make their programs work and try and make their efforts work. So that leaves us with a big opportunity to collaborate. Why are we not all sitting down together and figuring out together, coming up with a way that we can answer this need together? One of the reasons we haven't done that is because it takes money and it takes time. And we'd have to set aside the time to be able to do that. So this is where our project came in. And we know that there has been extensive studies done throughout the New England region on workforce issues, and specifically in the energy sector workforce issues. Many initiatives have already been installed and are being performed, but they're all being done separately. Every organization has their own way that they're responding to it. And we needed to pull that together and have a collaboration together. The other issue we have is that the surrounding states, the states themselves, are investing in workforce development. And that's something that New Hampshire is not quite there with yet. They've started it, but they're not quite there yet. And that's also a challenge for us because that means more money has to come from somewhere else. So there's a lot happening all over, but the need is overwhelming. And we have to figure out what the plan is to move forward. As we sat and identified the challenges, we discovered that the workforce availability is low. As Barry mentioned, historically in New Hampshire, we have low unemployment rates. And so that means our young people are looking elsewhere. They go elsewhere to go to school, and then they stay where they went, and they settle down there, and they find work there. And we lose out here in New Hampshire from that. When you couple that with the increase of available funds that are coming from the federal government, creating more jobs, yay, we have more jobs. We still don't have any workers to fill it. So that makes it an even larger challenge for us. We also have a recruitment issue. Excuse me. And the recruitment issue is that there are paths of recruitment that are being used, but the recruitment paths that exist are primarily for specific industries or specific areas. And if we don't share those resources, it doesn't get us any further. It keeps us very limited. We also have great educational opportunities. And we have a great K-12 program here in New Hampshire, but the focus needs to be more on the high schools. We need to get kids coming out of high school thinking about the energy industries. They don't know what the careers are. There's a lack of knowledge by them to understand what energy careers exist. And because of that, we lose out on that opportunity as well. The neighboring states all have that type of introduction. It's happening in the lower grades, and it's supported all the way through high school, which not so much here in New Hampshire. And the last part, I'm sorry. Ugh.
What you're saying is so good, so like that.
Yeah, it's dying me. The last part of that specifically for the New Hampshire utilities is it fair or appropriate for them to use ratepayer funds to support this type of work? And that's a big issue for them, and it's a big issue for them to be able to define. So where did the recommendations come from? Well, we basically had them in three main categories. These categories are not listed in any specific order. Not one is more important than another. It's just you can't put them all on the same spot or nobody can read it. So it's three separate. So the first is, as I mentioned, in education. We need to introduce energy careers early and often, all the way through school. We have the K-12 program. It's a great program. I've looked at a lot of what they're doing. It isn't in every single school. It isn't in every single jurisdiction or district. But it is a great program. It needs to be more advanced in the high schools. And part of that is the opportunity for apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is important because it's hands-on learning for kids, and that's really a great way for kids to learn. The second piece to that is recruitment. There's a lot we could be doing more with recruitment. We could go into the lower economic areas. We could create recruitment programs and pathways for those people to be able to access the education. It's great to have educational centers in our larger cities like Manchester and Concord, but a lot of the lower economic people can't get there, so that doesn't help them at all. And in turn, that won't help us. The last piece is training. Training has to be a part of it. We have a workforce now. Unfortunately, the leaps and bounds we're making is making that workforce not have the training they need to move forward, to be there for us in the future. So training has to be a piece of it. We have to develop a training program. And the training program that we need has to be available for all places in one place where everybody can access it. I think I'm going to die here. All right, so where do we go from here? We have to continue the momentum. We've made great strides talking about it. We need to continue talking about it. We need to share our stories, share our pain, but also share our experiences that have been good. We have to talk about our resources and share our resources. How can we make them work for everybody? And we need to come up with our solutions that can be implemented, but also that can be replicated. Otherwise, we're still working in our own little lane and not moving onward so that other people can share in it. That's it. It's all you. I'm gonna die.
I hope you all don't mind if I stand up and come up here and not sit the whole time and be able to engage with all of you. Again, I'm Kristine Dudley, the Director of Workforce Development at Manchester Community College. I think you'll probably hear a lot of themes in our presentation as to what Jennifer found in the study. So there'll be a little bit of duplication and I guess reinforcement too, right, of workforce strategies and how we collaborate and partner together. So just a little bit about the community college system. We are 7 community colleges with 5 additional academic centers. As you can see on the map, we are spread across New Hampshire, from the cities like Manchester and Nashua and where there's more densely populated cities all the way to Berlin. So there's definitely, when Jennifer was talking about that need, there are academic centers across, but definitely in the rural areas, it could still be an hour for someone, to get to one of our centers. So, but we do cover the state. Our goal is really affordability, accessibility, and workforce development. I think everything really that the community college system does works towards workforce development. So all of our programming is meant, whether it's a degree program, certifications, industry recognized credentials, it's all really driven towards helping people get the education and training that they need to be in the workforce. So I would definitely say whether it's, a small Excel class that's 2 hours long all the way to a 2-year degree program, all of the education and training we do is really meant towards workforce. So Jennifer had this is why I have a very similar extended community with the community college system. And actually, Barry, you know what? We could just probably maybe flip through. There we go. So we'll take a look. This is very similar to the slide that Jennifer had around who do we collaborate with? It's really an extended community outside of the walls of the community college system that really make a lot of the work that we do happen, right? So partnering with our K through 12 programs, plus our 4-year degree programs at, the local colleges, industry and trade partners, NECEC. So anybody that is in an industry role, I'll talk a little bit more about all of these kind of as we go through, but those partners are critical, right, in helping us support employers and, finding workforce. Community organizations, so as well, I think Jennifer had a lot of the organizations on her slide. So when I think of community organizations, I think of an organization called My Turn, who supports 18 to 24-year-olds getting into the workforce. I think about the International Institute of New England that we work with our immigrant and refugee population in Manchester. Job Corps is another one. So there are a lot of community partners that we work with for our programs, bringing them into our programs and helping them, get into livable wage jobs. Federal and state agencies as well. So there's a lot of federal money that's used throughout the programs that we have. If anyone's familiar with Southern New Hampshire Services, they are the administrator of what's called WIOA funding, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. It is federal funding provided to people who are either unemployed or underemployed, who want to get back into the workforce, and they pay for up to, I believe now, $6,500 in training and education for someone who wants to re-enter the workforce or get into the workforce. So just, federal and state agencies like that. And then, of course, our employers and our organizations that we partner with, right? So we need to hear from industry. We need to hear from employers. What are the skills that you need in your organization now, right? So, and that changes. That changes over time. And it's a continual partnership of what are the skills that are needed today. So I wanted to put this up here, and I'm going to call out, I'm going to phone a friend in the audience. And Andy Duncan is here, who is with Lakes Region Community College, and he is our energy program coordinator there. Andy, if you want to give a wave. I will say that the role that I play within the community college system and within workforce development is geared within the Manchester area, but I have partners like Andy and other workforce directors in all of the colleges that we work together. So though I may not be an expert in energy, I definitely feel that our strengths lie in talking about the strategies and, the workforce challenges that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. But I wanted to show, this is to one of the points I think that both Barry and Jennifer made about, we kind of have a wide range, right, of offerings that we've started across the community college system. Some of them very specific to energy, some of them that are going to need to be updated and changed, right? Like our automotive programs, our HVAC programs are going to be impacted by the energy changes that are coming, right? So we have to update our skills, update our curriculum, and make sure that we're keeping up with the changes in your industry that affect some of the programs that we already have. Just in terms of what we have in energy, I think it's almost like a smattering of different things that we haven't pulled together yet, because we're just starting, I think, in this area here. So I just wanted to give a look of what we have right now. And then I think in terms of collaboration strategies, so we've done a lot of work in Manchester, specifically in the healthcare space. And most recently, I'd like to think of it as kind of almost a center of excellence, where we've been able to really partner with all of the folks that we showed on that partnership circle and really create some strong collaborations that have lasted. And so some of the examples I might give will be in another sector, but all of these strategies are applicable to any industry, any sector. They can be applied to any situation that you have for your workforce needs. And again, I feel a little like I'm repeating some of the things that you heard from Barry and Jennifer, but some of the things that we've done is really look at this notion of co-opetition, and I won't say we, I will say our employers. And I think probably when you hear from Revision, they've probably done the same thing. We had our two biggest hospitals in Manchester, Elliott and CMC, realize that they need to partner together. Even though they're competitors, they need to partner together to solve the workforce issue. And that came from industry. That came from our partners to say, we want to start an apprenticeship program. We're going to partner together. We're going to hire at the same time. They're pulling from the same audiences, and they're hiring and filling classes together to run those apprenticeship programs. And both of their employees are in the room. Everybody's being trained together, and then everybody's doing their clinicals or their experiences at their hospitals. But those two, we kind of coined this co-opetition, right? Is yes, sometimes you have to work with those in your space to accomplish some of the workforce goals that it's the only way to solve the problem. Is we don't have enough people to run a program on our own, but if we partner together and we bring people together, we can run those programs, partner with the community college system, partner with organizations like Southern New Hampshire Services, who provides funding to a lot of these classes. And it's been successful for 2 years now. So CMC and Elliott have been partnering for 2 years, and I have a little bit of data I'll show in a minute as an example. Oh no, that's okay. I'm going to stay on that's previous slide for just a second. So I think you've heard some of these things already and some of the challenges, but I think the strategies that are all listed here really have us thinking about who our audience is. And we all know that's changing, right? Demographics are changing within our cities. Just even, I have 2 college-age students, and the difference, what I see in them is so different from myself a number of years ago entering the workforce. So you have to have those considerations of these young people and what are they thinking and what are they looking for. But a lot of these are about collaboration. So it's about reaching across to your competitors, to your community organizations, to your community college or a training center, finding funding, right, that can really help you with these training and education programs. So it's really all about collaboration. And that takes, and for all of us, I think sitting here, it takes time and it takes resources, and we're in the same workforce shortage as everybody else, right? So we're not immune to the same workforce challenges as a community college as all of our employers are, right? Finding instructors, finding content experts, finding people that can work within, what we're looking to build as well. So it's interesting because we're feeling it too. We're in the same boat. Let's see. So the last couple of points I'd just like to make in terms of flexibility with scheduling, meeting individuals where they are. With 1.5 right now % unemployment? I think we're at 1.5. I think that might be the most recent. So there are individuals who want to enter the workforce that might have a barrier. They might have childcare needs, they might have transportation needs, they might have housing issues or food insecurity. There are a lot of people that still want to enter the workforce, but they have a barrier. And some of the organizations that we work with help support people in that situation to be able to overcome that. And I can give an example just last week of one of our LNA classes that we're doing right now with CMC and Elliott. We're training licensed nursing assistants, and one of our students lost her daycare literally the Friday before she was supposed to start her program on Monday. So for a week, she wasn't able to come and participate in, it was online training in the first week, which was kind of good, but she came to us and said, I'm trying, and by that Friday, she had worked with a community organization, found daycare for her children that she was comfortable with, found funding through one of the organizations that we work with, and by the following Monday, she's still in the program, making up her online work, and made all of her clinical days this week. So sometimes it's just understanding where someone's coming from and being willing as an employer. The employer said, all right, we're going to help. We're going to try to we want you to stay in the program. It's not, sorry, I'm really sorry that happened. It's how do we work together to help someone who really wanted to be in this program, be in this program? And, as an employer, reaching out and helping someone who's in that situation, makes a huge impact. And so we're just proud to be able to meet individuals where they're at, and sometimes that's what it takes, is this huge collaboration of people. So apprenticeship, I know that Vaughan's going to talk about apprenticeship as well, but we've been doing a lot of work in the community college system, specifically under Apprenticeship New Hampshire, which is a grant-funded program the community college system received back in 2016. And more recently, over the past several years, we've been able to secure more funding under apprenticeship for just over $12 million right now that New Hampshire has to fund apprenticeship. And that funding goes to individuals for training. It goes to employers via RFP processes where you can, if you're looking to build an apprenticeship program, the team can help you do that. They have, it's almost unbelievable to think about how we've expanded apprenticeship, where there was just one smaller team of folks supporting the entire state. We now have 4 hubs of teams of people that are helping in all of the different areas of New Hampshire. So north, east, south, and west. So we have teams of people that can work with employers to build apprenticeship programs. And some of the successes listed there of what they've been able to do since inception. But apprenticeship is really it's a post-employment program, right? So you have pre-employment programs and you have post-employment programs. And I think, Barry, you made a really good point previously. So at the end of education and training, they want a job, right? So with apprenticeship, it's actually hiring the individual, putting them through a hourly paid position to be in training, be able to get the skills that they need to be in the workforce. And then there's an OJT component and some other things as well. But they have the job, right? They've been hired into the job. They're getting the education and training with a training provider. Could be the community college system, could be another organization. But it also helps people overcome some of the barriers that they're facing to not being able to leave maybe a job that they want to switch industries for, because they have to work in order to live and feed their family, but they want to change industries, right? So it's another, apprenticeship. I have to say that we've been working with folks in, healthcare, carpentry. We are just starting a biofabrication technician apprenticeship with Army, which is the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute. I know I always have to. So there's, I think that it's a great model to think about those opportunities where you're getting skilled workers and the apprentice is, excellent. The apprentice is really earn while you learn. So they're earning a wage while they're learning. They are hired by the employer. They don't have to have that previous experience because they're getting the education and skills that they need to do the job in the apprenticeship. They're assigned a mentor. There's a pathway. So there's so many, and I hope I'm not, I know you're going to talk about apprenticeship, and I think that we've done a lot of our work has been in this space most recently. And so happy to talk more about that in the Q&A as well. I think very much maybe this presentation is geared towards, employers. So if you're thinking about considering an apprenticeship, Elliott Hospital was kind enough to supply their outcomes from it's been 2 years that we've been working with them in their partnership with CMC, and they've had 77 students. They started some programming before they started apprenticeship. They've had 60 apprentices. 66 are totally active. They have a retention rate of 86% right now in both licensed nursing assistant and medical assistant, which tends to be a higher turnover rate in those jobs. They're hard jobs. They're difficult jobs, working with people, taking care of people, and caring for people. The healthcare field has had a lot of turnover, especially since COVID. So And the total funds saved, the $197,000, is working with Apprenticeship New Hampshire and WIOA funding, where their participants have qualified for funding from another organization to support the training. And that is funding that comes from either again, a state or a federal organization like WIOA, or the grant, the Apprenticeship New Hampshire grant, and that's $197,000 in training that organization has not had to pay out of their pocket. So they've been able to do more with that by their partnership. So that's just one example, I guess. And again, I think that all of this is transferable to your industry, to the energy industry. So excited to see where that can go. And I know that some of it is already happening, so I'm glad to do that, but hear about that. So these are our contacts across the state. These are the workforce directors who can connect you to any department chair, any specific person that you need at one of our colleges. The workforce development directors can get you to the right place. So I just thought I would start with our team. And Andy Duncan, again, is here from Lakes Region, and his contact information is at the top. And Ann Banks is the apprenticeship programs manager, and she runs apprenticeship for the entire state and manages the 4 hubs that I was speaking of. So if you want to talk to any of our colleges, we love to partner. And so I'll leave it at that. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for sharing, and thank you all for being here. I think I'm in a room of either really smart people or masochists, or maybe you're both. I think because we're talking about workforce development, right? This can be a dry subject. The thing I want to reiterate to everybody in the room, that this is the most important discussion related to climate change that needs to be had, right? If we look at all of the things that were presented at the keynote, none of that, well, almost none of that is getting automated. People need to build that, right? The amount of money that's going to be put into the electric transition across this country exceeds what happened when we built the interstate highway system. And when we built the interstate highway system, we had folks who could go out, there was no licensing, right? There was earthwork, there was paving, right? These were jobs that had a pretty quick onboarding, and didn't have regulations that would hamper the ability for a workforce to scale to meet the need. That's not the time we're living in. We're living in a time where we now have climate goals, we now have funding towards those climate goals, and historically in this country, what we have done is assume that with money, people will come and will do the work. It is a very dangerous assumption for us to make as a society. Right now, business as usual with the way that we do workforce, based on some back of the envelope calculations, we're going to be about 60% of the workforce that we need of electricians short of being able to reach our 2030 goals. So I just want to center that right now, that you being here is a lot, because the work that is being done and talked about here, this is the #1 barrier for the employers that are, at this conference to be able to do the things that they need to do to respond to climate. So thank you for being here. Revision Energy, some of you may know us. We're a multi-state employee-owned B Corp. We have offices in Brentwood and Enfield here in New Hampshire. We have a couple of offices up in Maine, as well as one in North Andover. I come from Maine. I'll say, driving into the city today, the city reminds me a lot of Lewiston, Maine. And I just want to take a moment to recognize our state's a pretty small town within a state, and we're really hurting from that. And just to see a lot of the Northeast, these are the communities. These are the folks that are our neighbors. And so thank you for having me down. As you'll see, our mission here, I don't totally agree with it. I'm from Central Maine. Our mission says make life better by building. In Maine, we would say, let's let people suffer less. Because I come from farmer stock. Reduce suffering by building our just and equitable electric future. Our mission as a company is a B corporation, and we're also We're also registered as a benefit corporation in the state of Maine because we can be registered as a benefit corporation in the state of Maine. We don't just serve our shareholders, right? Our shareholders are our employees, but we also have a commitment to our communities, to the environment, to our workers. All of this is the cost and benefit of doing business, and so we work that into our business model. And also note that when we look at our electric future, if this transition is not just and equitable, I don't know what we're doing to save for humanity, right? We need to make change, and this creates a unique opportunity to do that. The amount of power that the energy sector has on our democracy is significant, and where we can go with workforce and the opportunities that exist are significant in what is happening with the amount of work that we need to do to make this transition. So just want to center that. And we'll talk a little bit about how collaboration is making that happen. So if you could go ahead, Barry, hit the next slide. I oversee the workforce development efforts at Revision Energy, and I inherited our electrical apprenticeship program. So one of the things that we noted was in order to scale our workforce at a pace that's necessary for us to meet the needs of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts, we needed to invest in streamlining the ability of folks to get their license. So these are the folks that are doing the equivalent, right, of building an interstate highway system. For 4 years, our folks from New Hampshire have to work with their boss, almost within eyesight of them, for 4 years, right, in order to become licensed to do this independently. These are the structures that we are working within in order to respond to this climate crisis. We recognize the power of this program that started here in New Hampshire, and then we registered our apprenticeship in Maine as well in 2019, as being a fundamental driver to the future of our business. And one of the things that happened amidst crisis, which was COVID, was policy mattered. The state of Maine came together. I was actually asked to be on the Economic Recovery Committee with a bunch of other business owners at the time, a bunch of other stakeholders around the state to say, how do we respond to this? And we built the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, right, that said once money comes from the feds, this is how we will deploy it. At the time, I was running a small employee-owned B Corp that I had started. I had no idea that we would be using that money, but one of the big investments was an apprenticeship. And so when the ARPA funds came to the state of Maine, we were one of the fastest states in the country to deploy that money into our communities to be able to respond. As a result of that, Barry, if you go ahead and flip it, we have been able to register 4 additional apprenticeships. One that we launched in February, which is our manager apprenticeship. And this seems like a weird place for apprenticeship, right? Apprenticeship, we often think of it as this is a place for people that get into an industry and then move through it. But what happens in our trades are that we see such growth, and we see people who are naturally leaders that move into becoming managers. They haven't had a formal training in order to do that. So we launched a registered apprenticeship. It's a 1-year program. I'm actually missing it today. We have folks from all 3 states in South Portland right now meeting to elevate their game so that we can support apprentices across the company. This was made possible and accelerated by funds that we were able to secure through a competitive bid process, grant process, through the Department of Labor. If you go ahead to the next one. We have 2 other that we're launching through that. One is a customer service apprenticeship and one is a technical sales apprenticeship that are both in development currently. Another place where funds came through our state, and again, this is why policy matters, is that our governor's energy office put out a grant for clean energy partnership. And with that money, we're able to invest in our solar design apprenticeship that is helping folks who come in from various trades, maybe not even engineering school, many of them do, to help them learn how to design the systems that we build. And this is one of the areas of our company that's an extreme need, and so we really accelerated the development of that program. You can go ahead, Barry, to the next one. The other thing that came with the grant for expanding apprenticeship was the ability to focus on collaboration within the community. In 2020, right, amongst the upheaval that was going on around the country related to racial justice, we had a ton of folks who are in the streets, who are active on this, who are employees who said, I want to bring my whole self to work, and this is part of my whole self. At the same time, we had leadership in our company that said, this is really important to us, and we need to use our business as a force for good, and how do we do that? Well, one way is that we can make public statements about it, which we did, but we also looked at how do we build this into the fabric of our company? Instead of having this like, we call it JEDI, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, like a little team that does their thing. This needs to be, these are structural issues, and we need to have structural solutions. And so as part of that, that is what had helped center our mission that had already been part of what we were looking to do, but we really started to cement it more. One of the ways that we did it was with a pre-apprenticeship with LearningWorks in Portland. And LearningWorks serves 16 to 24-year-olds for whom normal school didn't work well. And kids that weren't able to fake their way through it if it didn't work well for them. And they have culinary arts and construction, and we do a career exploration in which we allow them to come to see what are the kinds of jobs that exist within our industry. We have career panels where folks will talk about the jobs. This is a group of them going out to a commercial job site about a mile from our office that was going on. So they get to see the process in action. And then as we see, I think the biggest part of career exploration at times is figuring out what you don't want to do. And the people who are still in the room, we say, all right, here's another chance for you to learn more about this to see whether you want to dig into this as a career. You can go ahead and flip, Barry, but my favorite program that we've been able to launch from this is a collaboration with the Portland Adult Education. One of the things when we leaned in on our JEDI passions was one of the greatest benefits that happens from our energy transition. There is some about serving households, right, that are low and moderate income households, but the real huge benefit is for workforce. When individuals can have jobs and meaningful income and a long career, that's transformational. And we struggled, right? We would go through, there's a very, job search agencies out there that are specifically looked at quote unquote diversity hires to try and attract folks that aren't white guys with beards that look like me. And it was hit or miss, right? The pipeline wasn't sustainable. We knew we needed to do something more. Portland Adult Education is the largest workforce service providers of new Americans in the state of Maine. And this is what they do, right? So we're good at building stuff. They're really great at community engagement and training individuals. And so this was our first cohort. The first launch, we had no idea what this would look like. Our first launch, we had 15 slots. We had 55 applicants. These are the 15 that made the cut for the first round, and some of it was based on work authorization dates, and some of it, we had an English language fluency cutoff, and so in Portland Adult Ed helps to support folks who are still interested who maybe didn't reach that to get their English language skills up. This group of people, amazing, right? They come from, most everyone here grew up in sub-Saharan Africa. We had electrical engineers, civil engineers, folks in IT, that most of these folks come to our country and they're sweeping floors, right? And one of the beautiful things about our industry is because we're not a legacy industry, our credentialing is way different, right? Our designers don't have to be professional engineers. We have a professional engineer, but we have folks, we're always teaching people our craft because we very rarely have folks who apply for jobs with us that have solar experience. This has become an incredible opportunity for us. 4 of the folks who are hired here are now co-owners at Revision Energy. 3 of them are installers. One of them, my favorite, you're not supposed to play favorites, but I play favorites, started a job as an engineer this past Monday with us. She finally got her work authorization. And we were talking about, you talk about transformation, and we'll talk about the transformation for her first, but that's the smallest transformation. Through the networks with Portland Adult Ed, we found after she got her job offer, she negotiated it up. She got the job, and she was in the bathroom crying for 3 hours. She was so excited about this job. This is like transformational wealth right? Moving to this country and having that job. And I say that to say the impact that these individuals are going to have on our organization, it's exponential compared to what it was for her, right? We live in the 2 states with the oldest population and the whitest population in the country. And our communities are changing. I come from rural Maine, right? Where we hold on to we'd love to put the borders around the state and let nobody come in. If you look at the demographics in the state of Maine,
They're changing.
it is, if you look at live births versus deaths, the negative trajectory that we have sees a dead state, right, within 30 to 40 years. Our communities need to open their doors to these folks share the same values that my grandfather shared of family-centeredness, hard work, talent, care, just unbelievable. And so the ability for these voices to inform our work moving forward is of much higher value than we're gonna provide to each of them individually. And this doesn't happen without investments in adult education, without grants that come through planning from the state and from our state leadership. And so if you go ahead and flip ahead, I have one other place, go ahead and flip ahead past that one. And this is probably the most impactful, first of all, of the grant funds that came in, because this is the one we can't put on our balance sheet. We can't put on our expenditures every year and expect we're going to get a return on it, which is how are we changing the structural view of these jobs amongst our society? Because it starts with kids that are this age, and when they get into middle school and they start envisioning what it is they can do with life, we as a society have done a really good job. Well, it's actually a really bad job of telling them the things they can't do or that they shouldn't do or that is beneath them. And the things that we have told them that are beneath them are the things that our humanity depends upon for survival. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Our survival depends upon people who are going to go out and build things. And so part of the funds that we have this tiny climate classroom that goes around to schools that we collaborate with that have been teaching about climate. Because in trying to make it less overwhelming, it's overwhelming to me, let alone kids that are going to be dealing with this for 40 plus more years than I will. And so we were able to take this, and if you go ahead and skip to the last one, Barry, and this team, even before we got the grant, started saying, workforce needs to be part of this outreach of climate. And so that investment, I don't think it would have come from anywhere else, right? Businesses we can't spend money on this, looking that far into the future on workforce. We have needs today, right? It's hard for schools to bring that subject matter expertise in. And so this is a critical piece of what we do is we have to rethink what these jobs are and the importance that they have in our society. And it's through collaborations like we've seen through those institutions to the point here in New Hampshire, institutions all over the place. How do we bring those together? In Maine, the State Workforce Board has been digging in, focusing on how is it that we streamline and integrate our workforce system, and been doing an outstanding job. Department of Labor has been leading it. And this is the thing we need to do. The resources are there. We need planning, and we need folks digging in on this. And that's why I'm excited to see people in this room to figure out how we pull those resources together to respond to the most critical crisis that we and our kids are going to see moving forward. So, thank you.
I'm going to leave the picture up there because if you don't get excited about that, I don't know why you're living, because that's what we're here for. Really, we're here to not just give you information about the things that we're trying to do, but we're trying to figure out how to bring a collaborative system that responds with equity, justice, and passion and concerns, because we have an emerging need to meet the demands of climate change. And like I said, I live in Mass, but what's happening in Maine impacts me. It impacts me because those are the communities that that I see when I'm up and down the state and the region, seeing those same impacts. So with that being said, we're going to transition to questions. So we want to hear, what questions do you have for the panel? What can we answer for you? What should we be talking about? So I'm going to come to you. So so come and tell us the name and what questions.
Thank you. Dave Bowley, University of New Hampshire. One of the things I heard, I think Barry mentioned it first, that there's a wide geographical area for a lot of these, for the educational opportunities that you're offering, all the way down to New York, Connecticut, and now up to Maine. In thinking about how you pull together all of these groups, is there, with regard to standardization, have you looked at accreditation for having these classes or these educational opportunities to match a different set or a standard set of criteria as to how they operate based on what they offer and what type of graduates you want coming out of this? And also, we're finding, what I find is that I'm hiring for culture first and curiosity second, and we can train anybody at that point. What's your philosophy toward that?
Vaughan, you want to take the question, or anyone else?
Sure. I mean, the work we're doing, we're doing it across 3 states. When it comes to licensed positions, that's the centralizing piece. And with all apprenticeship, right, it's that third-party credential that's important where it is. So, with our design and our technical sales, we align it with NABCEP credentials, which is the national credentialing body. I think that's an important part because it's portability, and that helps, right? That's what like a Department of Labor wants to see when it's giving funds out, because they want to see benefits for the workers. And it's great for an employer or for any program, because it's like, here's an organization that has said these are the important things, and let's make sure that we align it with those.
We are working on an effort with I think it's 4 or 5 states right now. We're trying to bring every state in, which is a cross-collaborative effort to talk about standardization of credentialing so they can actually up and down the region. So that way, if you get trained in Maine, you can still get a job down in Connecticut. So this is why it's so important for organizations to collaborate so we can look at credentials and support and training and standardize a lot of the training requirements so that way it can transition, because we're all screaming for talent, but we need to make sure that it's not a hindrance. Okay, I got training here in Connecticut, but I can't, there's an opportunity for me here in Maine, and because I don't get it, I can't get that job even though I fit that job. Yes. And this is why, at least I'll just say from our perspective, is so important to pull this together so tightly, because what's happening in every state is the same. I think I've said it now, this is the 7th one I've said in a panel discussion. It's the same conversation. Everybody's over there talking about the challenges of climate and climate change and all the innovation, but guess what they're not talking about? How we're gonna meet the demand to actually do that change. We need workforce, and we need to standardize a lot of things, but we also need to collaborate on a lot of different things to meet those demands. For the culture standpoint, I'll say this, and I think Vaughan did a very good job. You have to pay attention to your culture to make sure you're intentional about developing a kind of culture that's inclusive, and standards and values and how you believe in. I'll just say this and stuff like that. What Vaughan is talking about is the type of approach organizations need to take. We're intentional about it. We don't just make a statement about it. Trust me, I know I've been doing DEI work for 18 years. I've heard enough statements. What does your organizational values actually predict and do? So it's important that you lead with culture that's in front of your organizational mission, and it actually applies to what you do every single day. So, great question. Next, please.
I applaud what you're doing, and I think there's a lot of merit in your approach. The fundamental question is, the basic need of housing seems to be the biggest stranglehold on your workforce. Is there any effort among you to pressure state legislators to seriously address workforce housing?
No, I think that you make a very good point. That's one of the biggest barriers, right, for our workforce and there are some very serious issues, I think, at a state level that need to be addressed. I think within the community college system, we certainly work with our legislators to talk about these important issues and try to influence what we can around all of those barriers. So housing being one of them, again, childcare is another. There's a lot of those barriers that we see with our participants in our training. So though I can't comment specifically on what CCS&H as an organization is doing, but we definitely support a lot of those efforts to overcome. And also at a level that we can influence is to try to work with our community at state organizations that can help people in those areas. So that's something I feel like we do have a little bit more control over, is what we can do in the short term while that is a major issue. But just trying to help people kind of on that micro level of what's right in front of them, right? And maybe get them to a point, but it's definitely a bigger issue.
We've also tried to show states the numbers and how that's impacting their ability to retain a workforce and go. And that's some of the things I know Mass is looking at. Vermont is actually having a conversation as well, which is how do we address the housing crisis that they are seeing in their states and how that's impacting the workforce that they want to hire to meet their needs. So it is a conversation, but I'm just going to continue to beat a dead horse. This is why it's not just a workforce development, it's housing, it's living wages, it's wraparound support services, and just really getting out of this, the whole ideal of, while we do this over here, that's you guys. It's because this doesn't work with everybody without everybody talking together and trying to do their part in the solution.
If I could add, I mean, industry needs to step up on this, right? Like these old mill towns, right? It used to be the housing was built by the employer. Employers took off from that for a while. We're realizing that it's a mistake. We've seen some really great collaborations. Our state workforce board meeting was on Mount Desert Island, where Acadia National Park is, at Jackson Labs. They're collaborating with the local YMCA for childcare. They're building a facility. And so YMCA is coming on to manage that. They've built housing at which the local housing authority manages it, but they're making the investment to help reduce some of those. So I think industry has a place to step up on this, right? I think policy also is a need too.
Yeah, we've also seen Hydro-Quebec, a company that sits up on us, do the same thing in New York to try to work to address housing and needs as well.
Thank you all for being part of the panel. So Beth Stansusi with Clean Energy New Hampshire. So I'm hearing a lot that there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of programs, but there's not one single clearinghouse that has all of this information. Barry, you had touched base on having some kind of portal with maybe like jobs and things like that. But how is it that potentially Clean Energy New Hampshire or someone else that we identify as an organizational partner can become that clearinghouse? And where can we get that information so it all lives in one place? Here's the funding, here's how to do it, here's the pipeline, and all of that. I come from Stay Work Play New Hampshire as my previous hat. And it was a lot of workforce development working with 20 to 40 somethings in the state. So it's a hot topic for me. I'm very passionate about this, and I really appreciate you all being here. But again, how can we create a single resource that we can just put out there, market, so we can just get this done?
So I'm going to say this, and then I think the panelists will say this. So there's already solutions out there. It's just getting the state willing to adopt it. Illinois has a plan. Georgia has one. South Carolina is implementing one. California has one, where it's an all-inclusive solution, where it's basically a web portal with a lot of partners. Now, I will say that what's exciting, and this just kind of got my attention, is the hub program in Illinois is very much like the community college program, where there's 13 regional hubs, and then there's an interconnected system that aligns candidates with job employers. So in other words, it's almost like a tracking and portal system. So Beth, to answer your question, we hope that, and we have this conversation coming up, is to say, hey, we already have the technology. Let's just go out there and build a partnership to do it. So it's already there. It's just leveraging the partnerships to actually build the infrastructure to actually do it. So I'll just say it out there.
And I think too that there are some really good models actually already within New Hampshire that do similar work, and they end up becoming kind of that repository. And, you know, one of the examples I'm thinking of is, so within New Hampshire, we have sector partnership initiatives that happen in all of the different sectors. And there are some really good models that some of them are using. One of them that comes to mind is I Build New Hampshire. So Associated Builders and Contractors in the construction field has their website with all of their partners, they are actually a sponsorship of apprenticeship. So they have a carpentry apprenticeship that anybody who is a member can come under that to participate in apprenticeship. So I think there's some interesting things that some of the industry leaders are implementing to help their members. So I think of an opportunity for NECEC to think about what are those job roles that could come under apprenticeship. An organization like yours, like ABC, Associated Builders, like New Hampshire Auto Dealers does the same thing. So I can think of all of a number of examples of different industry partners that are getting involved in a similar way, being that central point of contact, helping organizations and companies underneath or part of their membership to have those resources. So I think there's some good models for it. And I think if someone grabbed hold of that, we would all be feeding into it, right, as partners.
So I think also the major issue for being able to collaborate and have one place for all of this is that takes time and money. And in order to have that, people have to have the commitment, and the commitment has to be higher than anything else they're doing. And right now, people aren't ready to make that commitment. But that's part of what we've been talking about, and part of the recommendations that we're having is to pull all these resources into one place. And in order to do that, we all have to get in one room, and we all have to share what we know and what we do. And that's where that's going to start out. It's coming.
So yes, we're going to get together in a room. Like I said, Beth, don't worry. When we get together, we're going to do this because I'm going to keep saying, because my perspective is more that regional base, is that NECEC has a model that is, they are far beyond a lot of the states already, but there is a model out there already. We just need to figure out how New Hampshire adopts a model that works for them, works for here. Because you can't just, unfortunately, you just can't cut and paste and make it work. It's got to fit the state's profile and what's going to be helpful for the education providers and the company and the business organizations to really help them meet their needs as well. So, great question. Next. I'm chasing someone. Anyone else have questions?
Hi. Where are we right now in terms of in New Hampshire on modernizing curriculum to today's technologies? By way of example, HVAC courses, most of them start with learning about furnaces and boilers, and then maybe one slide at the end, they'll tell you that a heat pump exists, right? Where, today's 18-year-olds need to just be taught this is a heat pump. This is all you need to know about. Forget that other stuff. Maybe you'll have a highlight later on how to service those or get rid of them. So where are we on, and there's analogs to solar and other industries as well, but.
I think that's a great question. And if I were in the HVAC department, I might be able to answer it a little bit better, but I apologize, but I'm looking to Andy because I do know that there are efforts right now, and you actually gave the perfect example within our HVAC program of needing to update and look to the future, make sure that our curriculum is matching what the current skills are. And so Andy and I talked, actually, I'm looking at you, Andy, talked about curriculum updates that are happening in some of these spaces, especially in electrical and HVAC. So Andy, I'm going to ask you if you know any more specifics on that, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll just agree with you, and the question is that, we've got a number of heating oil suppliers that they recognize they're going to be out. If they don't, they should be recognizing they're going to be out of a job in 10 years. And so there's a lot of potential. The good news is a lot of manufacturers with heat pumps have good manufacturer-sponsored trainings. But again, it's that collaboration that's needed. Community colleges and manufacturers getting together. Yeah. So we've got a ways to go. And Manchester Community College has great facilities for HVAC training. So I'm kind of looking back to Manchester.
Yeah, and I think
it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And I think we've started in some areas. So we do have, in addition to our HVAC curriculum, our certificates, our apprenticeship, our degree program, we also have a series of advanced classes that are 2 days long, meant for incumbent workers in the industry to learn additional skills. So we actually have a series of advanced HVAC classes, and I could see that one of the ones coming is going to be exactly what you're talking about. I don't think that we have it yet, but it's on its way.
I'll just throw in, that's a great question. We are piloting a workforce task force in Mass where the industry is actually coming and talking to the colleges about training and convening a quarterly panel to talk about training updates, credentialing, and everything else to make sure it's continuously meeting the updates. So once again, it just goes back to how well we can actually pull the ecosystem together and collaborate and have these discussions and actually take action on those things. And I think this is the last one, then we'll.
Oh, and I'm gonna repeat what I said before, is industry has to step up on this too, right? Like the dearth that we're seeing of trades professionals is dwarfed by the dearth that we have of folks who train trades professionals, right? That's challenging for scale. And so it really means partnerships. Like I worked under a grant with a local community college in Maine and the Department of Energy, standing up programs around the Northeast to integrate solar into the programs. As soon as they lose their subject matter expertise, the program falls apart. And we can't have that, right? And the folks who are out there doing the work are in high demand. So it really means companies got to step up, because it's going to be hard to find that unicorn who's like, oh, I'm going to give up a bunch of money and doing all of this stuff to come in and teach these courses. So collaboration can make that possible.
So we are at time. This is, like I said, I'm pumped up. I don't know about you and stuff like that. It's going to give me a lot of thinking to do about on my drive back. But let's get to work. Let's roll up our sleeves. I'm a Southern kid by way of the North now. In the South, we say let's get it done. We talk, we have panels, but let's actually get together and get the work done, so we can actually make a just and equitable transition. So thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate it. Beth, thanks for being a host.